we're going to look for just a few minutes at the 7th unit. And this 7th unit is on rational functions. And I'm looking at the big picture here, and this is the big picture for the third 9 weeks. So you can see that the 7th unit sort of lands about the middle of the third 9 weeks and is going to take up about 13 days. And you can see that the first 4 days of that unit are about solving and simplifying rational expressions. And then the rest of the time, the remaining 7 days, are about graphing rational functions. And in fact, the first 5 or the first 4 of those, the next 4 days after we've simplified and solved, the next 4 days are all lesson 5, and they're really sort of about looking at characteristics of rational functions. And I want to just look at the very first lesson or activity, if you will, in lesson 5, and that's this one on rational functions with removable discontinuities. So this lesson is not a really challenging lesson, but it's got some really great ideas and important thoughts in it. So we're going to go ahead and look at problem number 1. Note that it says to simplify the rational expression 2x over x and state any values of x where the expression is undefined. So if I take 2x over x and I simplify that, I just get a 2. And of course, we know that students will often leave it right there, but it did ask me to note where the expression was undefined. So that would they probably would remember to do that there, that x can't be 0. And then in part, and of course, you want to tie in that vocabulary of domain at that point. So really good spot to do that. And then we're going to look at part B, which says to use that simplified version from part A and predict the shape of the graph of the function f of x is 2x over x. So of course I know that's my y. And so I think y equal to 2 is a horizontal line. So I'm going to draw the graph of a horizontal line through 2. Okay, so I happen to know that I need a hole right here at the origin. Well, when x is 0. And some of your students may know that as well. They may recognize that, but a lot of them may not, and that's okay. You kind of want to leave that, and if they recognize it, that's great. And if they don't, just you don't have to worry too much, because what we're going to do as we move through the rest of this question is sort of see that. So if you look at part C, it asks us to graph the function f of x equals 2x over x, so the same one, okay, using a standard calculator window. That's that standard calculator window, and then make sure that when we graph it, we graph that unsimplified form. So we don't want to plot 2 or graph 2. We want to graph 2x over x. So let's go to our calculator and go to y equals. And we're going to use our fraction thing. So we're going to go alpha and y equals to get our fraction. And so that's 2x over x. All right. And I'm going to check my window and make sure it's good. And it is. And then I'm going to hit graph. And when I do, this graph looks very much like the graph of the one that I just did. It looks very much like that. So now let's go on to part D. I'm going to put yes right there because it does look like that. So part D says turn off the axes on the graphing calculator and graph the function again. All right, so I'm going to go back to my graphing calculator, and to turn off the axes on the graphing calculator, you want to go second and zoom, which is that format window, and you want to go down to where the axes options are, and there's tons of colors that you can choose these axes to be, but if you scroll through enough, you'll get an option of off, and I'm going to choose that option, and then I'm going to graph. And you can see there is a hole in this graph. And so when I go back to look, there's a hole, and then your students are asked to think about why that happens. And of course, that's happening because of the domain of my original situation, which was 2x over x. And so I see that domain issue there, and I can mark that there should be a hole. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to put that open circle in on my picture like it should have been to begin with. This is an important lesson to help them to think about the fact that when that term reduces there, that 2x over x, and that x reduces, a lot of times students will have a tendency to think that just drops away and it doesn't affect the graph at all, but of course we know that it does, and it does leave us with those removable discontinuities. We spend a lot of time thinking and talking about asymptotes and not maybe as much time talking about those places where we have a hole. So that's an important thing to note. It's a good lesson, and like I said, not crazy challenging, but the students can work through that. And then after that, you're gonna come in and look at end behavior on the next day. And so I hope you'll enjoy these lessons on rational functions and enjoy this unit.